Hello. Hola. Good evening, everyone. For those who are fortunate not to have met me yet, I'm Leanne. I'm Karl's sister, Leanne. I should probably start by thanking the two gorgeous grooms, Karl and Fran, for letting me be part of their special day. However, they both know they never had any choice in that matter. I was always going to be right in the mix. Obviously, when he asked me to do a maid of honour speech, I was quite overwhelmed, as it's not a typical tradition at all weddings. However, Karl is not a typical or traditional man, and his wedding has by no means been an exception. He's had to be different his entire life, and he's got rid of many typical British customs tonight. We have no first dance, thankfully no beige buffet. Mum walked him down the aisle. At one point he didn't even want bouquets. However, thankfully, me and the bridesmaids weren't going to back down on that one. The DJ's under strict orders to under no circumstance play the Macarena or Oops Upside Your Head. And obviously, a wedding of Karl's, there was never going to be a bride involved. However, I wouldn't have been surprised if Fran had turned up in a beautiful flowing gown and veil today. He would have looked beautiful nonetheless. So, as I've established, Karl's always had to go against the grain. His uniqueness can sometimes be perceived as, well, just weirdness. He's presented with some peculiar behaviours over the years, including his intense fascinations and obsessions. Many of them have been dropped as quickly as they were picked up. From mythical creatures to musicals, to pop stars to movies. He'd often obsess over a specific item for weeks on end, pestering my long-suffering mum and dad for whatever it was he had his eye on. Usually, when they did surrender, they'd take him to the shop, and more often than not, he'd walk in, pick it up, which was usually a book or a CD, only to flick through a few pages or look on the back cover, slam it back down, and storm out of the shop. Turns out, he wasn't that bothered after all. It's not just his ever-changing obsessions, but his ever-changing appearances that I've had the honour of witnessing over the years. I've seen more different Karl versions, and he's had more different transformations than Cher and Madonna put together. It's definitely been one of his defining characteristics. But let's just hope his obsession with Fran is like his obsession with sharks, and it's here to stay. And let's just hope he finds sticking with the same husband a little easier than he does his styles. For anyone that knows my brother, they may initially think of his handsome charm, his good humour, his creativity, and his profound drawing skills. I myself, who knows my brother a little better than most, can think of other defining characteristics. Dramatic, docile, diva-ish, and difficult. But researchers suggested this should be a nice speech, so I'll swiftly move on. I can clearly remember him coming into this world on Christmas Eve 1990. As a result, he subsequently stole my Christmas. Unfortunately, this was a pattern that proceeded to remain throughout our childhood, with him either stealing my thunder or just stealing my things, like my mermaid dolls and dress-up clothes. Everyone doted on Karl from the minute he was born, including my mum. He was quickly nicknamed Golden Balls due to her quite obvious favouritism. Not that I'm bitter at all. But we weren't always this close. I used to be quite evil to him, and at times this would be reciprocated. I've had many random objects come my way. The most innovative weapons I can recall was a huge dog toy and some nappy cream. To say he was an athletic child, he sure did have a good fucking shot. Luckily, I bear no war wounds today. However, the same can't be said for Karl, who was often a danger to himself. My favourite is the third-degree burn to his hand. When he was a baby, he went to pick up he tried to pick up a light bulb that had been on all night, assumingly to put in his mouth, as he was a much less fussy eater back then. But my personal favourite has to be the Harry Potter scar that remains upon his forehead. This incident was a result of him one night back in the early 90s, swaggering around in a custom-made mermaid tail, dress-up shoes, and a bright red wig. All mine, by the way. As you probably gathered, which beloved Disney princess he was trying to impersonate that night. However, This particular performance ended up with him falling into the edge of an open door, not Prince Eric's open arms. And the only thing that the Little Mermaid lost that night was consciousness and a lot of blood, not his voice. Mermaids were our only shared passion, and along the years we've had many shared interests which have undoubtedly strengthened our bond and bring us close together, particularly after I found out one such shared love was the love of handsome young men. Into adulthood, Karl's always been my crutch, my counsellor and my go-to, and I couldn't be more proud to be stood here today as your sister. I love you. Oh, God. I'm so glad that you've been able to find your soulmate. And to Fran. This is probably the part where best man would bring up past relations. However, Karl has always been quite private when it's come to romance, and that suited me just fine, as I was quite happy to have him all to myself. I never once thought that you would want a life partner, and let alone fall in love. You first mentioned Fran quite quickly after one of the aftermaths of COVID. I thought it was nice during a particularly challenging and lonely time for Karl to have a friend. However, I took a little more notice later on when, on a visit to London, he was so engaged in a phone call with his new love, he proceeded to step out into a crossing as an oncoming Red Bull, an infamous Red Bull, nearly took me and my entire family out with him. Finally, at the end of 2021, we got to meet the man himself. Expectations were high. Just who the fuck was this handsome Spanish stallion trying to steal away my brother? But I needn't have worried. We all fell in love with him as quickly as Karl did. Fran was warm, kind and charming the whole time, if a little shy. However, I later found out that was mainly just because he didn't know what the fuck we were all saying. I'm pleased to say his English has progressed and Karl is making slow progress on his Spanish. But no language barrier on earth could get in the way of their love for one another. I'm sure everyone in this room would agree that when they're both together, their affection and connection for one another is inspiring. I can't help being in awe of the beautiful and meaningful bond that you both share. At the time of coming out in 2004, when Fran was about 4, the idea of Karl being able to get married was inconceivable. Thankfully, although there's still a way to go, the world has progressed, and today we can happily and freely celebrate the most sincere love that I have ever seen. In my 38 years, sorry, still a bit to go. In my 38 years of attending weddings, including my own, Sazuch, I have never seen a more true and real love between two people than I do you. Fran, I see how happy you make him, and if I have to give him to anybody, I'm glad to be giving him to you. It takes a special kind of man, after living with Karl and knowing the real Karl, to still willingly want to share your life with him. You keep him grounded and put up with his stupid ways. If anyone brings out the best in my brother, it's you. Bienvenido a la familia, que Dios te ayude. That should say, welcome to the family, may God help you. Everyone, I'd like to invite you to raise a glass to the happy couple, Karl and Fran. My life.
Thank you so much. That was so beautiful. Thank you so much.
I love you. Oh, fuck.